Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session, Journey from Past to Present, Primary Sources of Community. My name is Keith Patterson. I'm the Associate Director of the Teaching with Primary Sources Western Region.
Hey, my name is Kile Clabaugh. I'm the project coordinator for the TPS Western Region, and I also teach in the journalism department at MSU of Denver.
I'm Roland Schendel. I'm an associate professor of elementary education and literacy at MSU of Denver.
Thanks, everybody. And I just wanted to point out before we get started that all the resources that are going to be in this session can be found at that bit.ly link, as are the resources for all our sessions at CCIRA. So just go to bit.ly/TPS CCIRA 2021, all in caps, and you'll find this presentation. And it might be helpful for you to pause now and go grab that. There's a lot of things we're going to be looking at and working with, and it'd be helpful to have this presentation ready so you can see those a little more clearly. And again, just like to mention that we are with the Teaching with Primary Sources program, and we are based out of the Metropolitan State University of Denver. Our information is on the slide there. If you wanted to grab that now, we'll also have that information at the end. Just a few things before we dive into the content, just to let you know where we come from and what the Teaching with Primary Sources program is all about. Basically, we're a grant from the Library of Congress, and our main objectives are really to spread the word about the educational resources that are available from the Library of Congress, and as well as really just show how to use those effectively in the classroom. And we do that in a lot of different ways, but that's just the basic overarching goal of the program. Really just to drive you to use those resources that are available at loc.gov. And before we really dive into it, just a little bit of information about the Library of Congress and the things that they have available for educators. Really just as a bit of a background, the Library of Congress was founded in 1800, right at the beginning of our country. And the Library of Congress was originally housed in the Capitol, and then the Capitol was burned down along with the original Library of Congress in the War of 1812. And then was reformed after that when they purchased about 6,500 books from Thomas Jefferson. And that book collection is still on display at the Jefferson Building in DC. Moving that forward, the Library of Congress now is the nation's largest library, with the ongoing mission really to provide the best information possible to Congress as they make our laws, and has also become an institution that's available to all Americans, especially through the loc.gov website. And as it stands now, they have over 170 million physical items in the collections, as well as over 60 million available online that are available, in most of them for free and widely available for your use, as they are owned by us, the American people. And a lot of people think it's just books, but it also includes things such as manuscripts, visual materials, sheet music, maps, audio items, and moving images, as well as other things like three-dimensional objects. And their collections continue to expand into the digital realms as well. And they will continue doing that, preserving those materials and making them available for the indefinite future. Before we do move on, I just want to let you know that if you have interest in this or want to learn more about this, our office is the TPS Western Region. We're based out of Denver at the Metropolitan State University in Denver. But really our overarching thing is to really work with teachers. So this is just a kind of a taster of it. We're not going to get into all the things we do or how to really utilize all the materials at the Library of Congress. But if you are interested, we do have grants available up to $20,000 to work with schools, districts, institutions to do this work. And if you have any interest in this, or just have questions in general, we are here to help, and you can just contact us. General information about the program is available at the Library of Congress website. The address is down there, and just look for the Teaching with Primary Sources program, as well as just contacting any of us directly. Our agenda for today is we're just going to cover some different things, looking at different aspects of community, especially through the lens of past and present. We're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to do a really foundational thing we like to do with educators, because it works really well with students, is just to really how to do a primary source analysis. So we're going to do an activity called a mystery photo with that. Then we're going to do an unpacking of what community is using a strategy called fourfold. And then we're also going to do some additional activities with some different strategy of how to look at the past and present around the theme of community using primary sources. And then we're going to wrap up by really looking at some classroom extensions and then doing a nice reflection at the end. And with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Kyle, I think, and he's going to lead us through this primary source analysis.
Sure. So this is the Library of Congress primary source analysis tool. It's like a really foundational analysis tool that has three different sections to it. So we got observe, reflect, and question. And for younger students, a good way to approach that is, what do I see? What do you think you know? And what do you wonder? So we're looking at really just simple compartmentalizing of our thinking when we're viewing primary sources. And this is a good time too for your students if they don't have the vocabulary, for example, and they're too young. For the observation step, they can get up out of their chair and go point to something, and you can help build that vocabulary. The reflection step is all about inferences. It's all about building that background knowledge, or calling to that background knowledge and seeing if students can educate other students through their background knowledge. And then the questioning, and it's all about wondering and taking those curiosities to the next level to research or something like that.
Yeah, a couple things to think about with respect to this primary source analysis tool is, like Kyle had suggested, giving your students access to thinking, to text, to resources and sources, beyond their ability maybe to read, you can enhance their opportunities to view and capitalize on those strengths. So you also might consider that an English language learner who's really trying to develop a sense of language use can really focus on the opportunity to identify things that are familiar to them by viewing an image, as well as your striving readers, so to speak. So if you use this with a written text, which you can do, they can pick out keywords, words that they know, cite vocabulary, so on and so forth. So this is really nothing short of phenomenal in the sense that it sets the stage for leveling the playing field, so to speak, with all your learners. You think about that with your striving learners, your English language learners, and then you look at the flip side where it's actually can be modified or amended to meet your accelerated learners' needs. So you could actually have them create the prompts that might go along with each one of these steps of the analysis process, as kind of a building of a learning experience, so they can take their abilities and apply it to helping challenge their peers.
Yeah, and just a quick note before we go to the photo, the important part of this is that compartmentalization. It's focusing only on observations for an extended period of time, focusing only on reflections for an extended period of time. And you can play with whatever time or whatever order you want students to do this with. But that honing in on one of the categories is what is most important for this. So let's move on to the mystery photo then. So we have, let's see, we got this photo here of, well, let's start. So the mystery photo is powerful in the sense that you can give your students a image or a audio clip or a video or whatever it is that they've never seen before. And you can have them dive into this primary source and learn everything they can about the context and everything like that through these three simple compartments, I guess. So we'll just model this real quick. What do you see in this image?
I see gelati.
Yeah, gelati. I feel like it was always pronounced gelato, right? No?
Yep, I see additional words like ice cream, Italian ice, sherbet, soft ice cream, sign in the window that says open. I see people.
Kid. Adults.
Neon sign.
See a car. See a trash can.
Yeah, like a
there.
small cooler too. So now so if we think about community, and we're going on this idea of what journeying through communities of past and present, what do we see here that are like markings of a community?
Diversity.
I see people gathering. I see people sharing ice cream together. It looks like there's people carrying different kinds of ice cream or drinks or things.
Neighborhood.
Awesome. So what do you think you know about this image then?
I think it's a neighborhood because it's just not packed side by side with a bunch of other businesses. So I'm imagining that, the vegetation around it, the trees, and some other buildings behind might be houses.
So you're thinking it's more of like a suburban kind of area than a dense urban area?
Kind of picturing this shop, just planted in between homes and stuff. So it's kind of, old school neighborhood where you got a great place to go that's just around the corner.
This looks a lot like an ice cream shop in small towns where I grew up. Just kind of had a counter ice cream store.
What type
I
of
think they
flavor-
sell other things besides ice cream because I'm thinking that box has got like donuts or something in it. So I'm thinking there's a little more diversity as far as what they offer than just ice cream cones and things.
Oh, interesting.
I think this is probably just based on that car. I'm guessing this is probably sometime in the 1980s. Because I think that car was,
I think we had that car.
I think it's like a Chrysler K car that were everywhere at that point in time.
I think you can walk to this place as well as drive. That's in terms of community.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So what questions, what do we wonder about this image?
I wonder how long it's been there, how the community views it or thinks about it. And I also wonder, with my experience with ice cream shops, they're seasonal. So does it shut down at a certain point in time?
Yep.
I wonder what flavors they have.
I wonder where this is at, because in the area I grew up in the Midwest, basically, we didn't see like gelati and Italian ice. So I wonder if this is in a different part of the country. I wonder what part of the country this might be in.
I wonder if it's a family business. It's been around for generations, right? Like my grandpa started this ice cream shop and we all grew up working here.
Yeah, there was always that one place that everybody worked at, right? Awesome. So that was the mystery photo, and this is a really abbreviated version of it. And I would challenge you to really extend and embrace the silence in this primary source analysis activity, just to really suss out and pull out all of these small details that might mean something to an argument or to a claim, or just might be an interesting tidbit about it.
As a reminder to take your time teaching and using this strategy, we'd offer you the idea of, having this image or an image like this posted in your classroom when students walk in, and you've got, what do you see written next to it? And then they just put sticky notes up there of all the things they see. And if it's a pre-writer, then they just put a sticky note on what they see. So the thing or whatever, or the little arrow or whatever. If you're doing it remotely or online, use something like Jamboard, and you include this in that sticky note digital process. But really to play this out and maybe leave the image up for several days or a week, or a different image each day or each transition, and just really letting the kind of the compartmentalization of this thinking process and this analysis process to kind of drip by, so to speak, and then move on to the think, and then move on to the wonder, and jump around, play with that with your students.
Yeah, awesome, Riley. I love that idea. Just have students ruminate on the observations for a full day, and then go to the reflections the next day, because their curiosity is just going to be getting to them if it's a really compelling and engaging image. So this next activity that we'll get to here, I'll let Raleigh explain it, but we're going to do the fourfold concept development strategy.
So this strategy is quite remarkable in the sense that it'll allow us, when we focus on language objectives and really unpacking key academic terms or, subject terms that are integral for our students to understand a process or the other bits and pieces, the nuances of what we're trying to teach them. Really, this is an opportunity to zoom in on language, on vocabulary, and in many cases, taking something that's powerful and purposeful, like friendship or liberty or something like that, that's really hard to define. This gives you the opportunity to help kids, build handles to terms like those, and take them away, with some greater understanding. So we want to apply this to the term community, but to just walk you through the process real quick, we're going to actually model it very briefly to showcase how it might work. But you start with a list, you rank that list, you compare through metaphors, analogies, so on and so forth, and then you go on to including illustrations. So hopefully you can see how each one of these pieces of this strategy really can zoom in on particular strengths that your students have. So it's honoring to them, so to speak, to use a strategy like this, because it's so diverse. And you've got visual learners, and they maybe just dive into the illustration portion of this. And it doesn't mean they have to create the illustration. They can pick, or they can find images that showcase their understanding. So imagine this in terms of teaching and the value that it serves for assessment purposes, and you to see, okay, how are they thinking? How does this help them make their thinking visible? So we're going to model this process very briefly. We're going to jump through each step. And the term and the concept in the center, if you can imagine, is community. So we're going to start with our list. We're going to list anything and everything that we can think of in terms of community. So kind of eliciting our background knowledge. So I'm going to think people.
I'm thinking we have homes.
Places to shop.
Jobs.
Infrastructure like roads and bridges and stoplights and things of that nature.
Security of some sort, like a feeling of security, but also like a systematic security.
Are you thinking
Parks
like
and playgrounds?
Mm-hmm.
I think of communities of having trees and plants and things of that nature.
Places to shop.
Trust between like individuals.
So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. You can spend as much time as you like, or you want to mess with and try out for each one of these. Sometimes it's really nice once students get familiar with this strategy to just say, for 1 minute, list as many things as possible. And imagine if you're working with pre-writers, they can be shouting out the stuff, and you can be doing this as a shared writing on the board and just trying to keep up as much as possible. But all the while, I'd encourage you to have your students that are more advanced in terms of writing development to be creating their own as they go, or collecting those thoughts with you. So we're going to jump to the rank, and with the rank, the generic instructions are to just take the top 3 things that you had from your list and rank those kind of as a hierarchy in that rank box. So what would you say, fellas?
I think people's got to be high on that list.
Infrastructure, I think, would have to be pretty high too, because you got to be able to get to places.
I might add roles/jobs to that.
I think
so. Yeah, go ahead.
And homes and businesses, which I think were 2 separate things on our list, but yeah.
So here's a great example of where you're like, your students, well, you said only 3, can I have 4? And you're like, I don't know, can you have 4? And they're like, but these are so powerful, they have to be included. You're like, I don't know, tell me more. So that's where it's not like yes or no, it's all well, why do you only have two? The whole process is a revealing and just incredible one. So let's jump on to compare. So if we're to think about a metaphor and analogy, let's each kind of offer one as an example before we move on to illustrating.
It's probably because it's lunchtime, but I'm thinking a community is like a buffet because it's got a lot of different things and each one contribute to the overall experience. And 3, people are part of the experience.
Nice. I love it. And these metaphors can be really hard, but they don't have to be perfect metaphors. They can be just really loose. I was thinking community is like a river because it kind of flows between the area. It moves between different houses and places. And then there's like a whole ecology, like a whole ecosystem to it in a river, just like there is a community.
Yeah, I would like to think about this in terms of an analogy and just say, community is to life as an engine is to a car. So the direction that your students take this is going to be quite revealing, as you can imagine, and really, modeling that process for comparison will help many of them, but some of them don't need much modeling, and they can just cut them loose and say, yeah, keep going, come up with something else, something that really reveals how you think and what you're thinking. And then as you jump to the illustration, you can think of this in terms of, okay, what might I draw here? Or what image might I include? Or what might I create? So any ideas? Let's offer one each, if you don't mind.
I always like the idea of like drawing your metaphor and like kind of pointing to things to help explain your metaphor.
That's where my head was going as well. I was trying to think of another way to approach that, but that was what I was thinking as well.
And that's absolutely a logical direction to go. Your kids, your students may think differently than that. And I was just thinking, an image of my classroom community, my students and myself, some volunteers, our class pets, just as a model of community. So this is a powerful tool to use, if you can imagine. If you haven't used this before, we encourage you to test it out and try it out in a variety of ways. Certainly as you develop community at the start of the year or after a break, like winter break, and you realize, well, we got to bring everyone back together with this like vision, this shared view of what we're trying to achieve here. You can use this fourfold in beautiful ways to develop community, to really unpack concepts and ideas that are hard or difficult sometimes for students to define and understand.
Yeah, and
so we're going to go ahead and, go ahead, Kyle.
Just a quick note that, this doesn't have to be like a class thing or whatever. If you have that one student that's really struggling with I don't know, fractions or, some other obscure topic that they really need to figure out what's a subfraction or what's a improper fraction. I just don't understand that. To have them help them break that down, that concept, that abstract concept down, so that they can have those concrete handles. Fourfold's a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Keith.
Oh, I was just going to say, and on that, to add to that, Kyle, that there's a reason why we put this particular activity towards the top of our presentation, because the concept of community is a little difficult to think about, but this gives you some real solid ways to break it apart and move on without getting hung up on really esoteric things that are kind of hard to understand without doing some of this pre-work.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful examples and insights, you guys. Let's go ahead and jump forward, and we're going to move to the next slide, which is going to introduce the opportunity or create the space for us to showcase another strategy that we think will really help you kind of teach community, learn about community, learn through community, and in comparisons of past and present. So you see two amazing images here because there's a lot going on. There's a lot to be learned from, and a primary source on the left from way back, and a source on the right from more recent. So we're going to start with this 3-2-1 kind of comparison, contrast and compare. And for the 3, we're going to identify 3 things that are the same. So 3 things that are the same.
And here's where we can really lean on, our primary source analysis tool, the I see, I think, I wonder. So it's we can use that I see for this first step. And to kick it off, I see that there are similar. I see people.
I see masks. It looks like they're both wearing masks, or both images have people wearing masks.
I see outdoors, outside.
Yeah, and those are great 2 or 3 great things that are similar right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then let's move on to the next piece, and that's 2 things that you see that are different.
One's in color and one's in black and white.
One has a person on a stretcher, and there doesn't appear to be anybody who's being assisted in that way in the more modern picture.
Excellent. And then we go to 1. What's one thing that these 2 images share with respect to community? I'd say awareness of others. I see people on the left caring for someone, carrying and caring, it's assumed. Ambulance station, so some kind of medical support there. With respect to the one on the right, the flu shots are here, an indication that, your well-being and the precautions we might take to support ourselves and others health-wise, they're apparent in both. Either of you want to offer one? I mean, you can go further to this. You don't have to stick to the 3-2-1.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I think that the medical aspects of it in working as a community, I think you mentioned this a little bit, but just really working as a community. I know, just because I know about the image, that the second one is people at a COVID-19 testing station waiting to be tested. And so there's this medical aspect of working as a community to get over a pandemic.
So in thinking about this 3-2-1 strategy, there are many ways that you could use it. 3-2-1 technically could be used with a written text, and you're saying find 3, words that epitomize community. Find 2 phrases that really make you understand community better, and find 1 sentence that you think, if this were to be like the topic sentence or the most powerful sentence, this is the one that I would draw out. We're going to go ahead and move forward, and we're going to jump to the next slide, and that's going to give us an opportunity to showcase and create space for another strategy. And this is one of my favorites. It's the true-false strategy. And if you're not familiar, we'll give you an indication or a visual representation of where this strategy is drawn from. Scholastic has a series of books that are focused on true-false. And so you turn the page, and it's true or false. Two-headed snakes actually exist. And your students are like, wait, what? So they answer that. True, they think they do, or false, they think they don't. And some sort of kind of explanation or rationale for why they think they're they do exist or why they don't. And then you go on to read the actual answer, which actually includes a lot of detail and explanation for why it's true or why it's false. Now, the flip side of this is you want to model that and showcase those true false examples so your students can create them. So that's where the beauty comes in. So you've got some students that really like to entertain their peers, or they're class clowns, or they're always thinking differently than others. This might be the exact type of activity to really engage them and grip them in a series of learning experiences. So we're going to go ahead and practice this. So we get to kind of mess with this a little bit. True, false with this past and present set of images.
So true or false? More people are hurt on the playground in the past than they are in the present.
How about true or false? These are the same playgrounds, but at different periods of history.
True or false? You could actually build your own playground if you had the space to do so in the past. So with respect to this strategy, with each one of these, we could take this in a number of directions. So remember with Kyle's true false at the beginning, more students were hurt on past playgrounds than they are on current playgrounds. We might answer that, and then Kyle would give us some of the details and the facts that are associated with it. Can you follow up, either of you, with some of the facts or the information that would establish possible rationale for that being true or false?
Well, one of the things, just for my question, I think about is like the playground flooring that they use nowadays. Like in the past, I'm seeing dirt. A lot of those kids aren't even wearing shoes. And in the more present current day one, that the ground is a little bit softer. They put that ground on there. There's not nearly as many kids. They look like they're properly dressed, the ones that are in there.
And there's nothing that centrifugal force is going to go flinging them off. I think the worst thing that would happen on the modern playground is he might fall about 3 feet onto a soft mat.
Yeah, so to get your kids to answer that true or false question and provide their own rationale as the audience, as the listener, is one direction to go, and or to create the true false as the the inspirer of thinking is another direction to go. And look at the value and the power of comparing things that might be really engaging for your students in terms of playground equipment, teeter totters versus things, the rocking toys, the playground equipment that are associated with nowadays. So just think about all the primary sources and texts that you could use to really get your kids to think about community through something like true false.
Yeah, I love this one. I was just thinking that this one would be a great one to have like a semester, a year-long challenge where you have like stump your teacher. If you can come up with a true or false question that stumps your teacher with an image associated with it, and you can back it up with evidence, like that's the biggest learning experience I've ever seen. Like that would be great. I would love to do that with my students.
We're going to go ahead and jump forward, and we're going to showcase yet another strategy called the STEM diagram. And essentially what we do is use a traditional, you can think about then and now, a traditional Venn diagram, and showcase that as a way to encourage our students thinking visually, and use sentence stems to guide their responses as to what goes in each part of that Venn diagram. So with this rendition of past and present, in terms of this whole scope of things that fall under the umbrella of community, we decided to zoom in on these images. So our STEM diagram would or could include what sentence stems, you two?
Sorry, I was muted. I like the ones if you're looking at the past to like compare it to the future. So something like, I think this neighborhood, or I think these kids are playing like we would play today because of this.
Or I would think it's important for children in a community to play together, whether it be the past or the present.
Yeah, you can imagine this could also go if your prompts were general enough to create space for them to think diversely. Your sentence stem might be, the kids in these images are dressed as, and then you might open up space for them to be zooming in on how they're clothed and what that tells you about past versus present in terms of community, maybe even time of year, season. So there are, go ahead.
Sorry, just thinking about the STEM diagram, I'm wondering if like a picture of an old classroom and a picture of your current classroom would be a good, compare and contrast using past and present. How is this classroom like ours, or how is it different? That kind of thing.
Or on that note, you could use a map of your community and how that's changed over time, or your school building over time, or anything like that.
Well, and think about this in terms of like your sentence stems could be much smaller, like kids play, kids wear, kids act, play spaces are. As in the left-hand one, it looks like that was like the field that our school was next to or in, and it wasn't cordoned off, and sanctioned, so to speak, for our playgrounds of today. So imagine all the possibilities for using the STEM diagram and just twisting and melding a couple strategies that we typically use, in this case to scaffold, to support your learners. If you have some accelerated learners, maybe they create their own stems. They practice that process to try to categorize or showcase their categorization of how they're thinking, what they're thinking about, and in this particular case, in terms of community. We're going to go ahead and jump forward. We're going to look at our next slide, just mostly as a reminder that the resources that we can use in the classroom for and with our students come from a wide variety of tools and places. And Making Thinking Visible, if you're not familiar, is an absolutely astounding book full of strategies like the ones we've showcased here today to help you help your students reveal their thinking, so you can be a part of that journey, so you can assess, you can progress monitor, you can jump in for teachable moments, and you can honor them and celebrate and nurture their momentum as learners. The Strategic Teacher is nothing short of fantastic. It's a delightful collection of diverse and varied strategies that you can use and manipulate and twist and reframe for the purposes of your teaching, particularly for older kids. So for those of you in the upper elementary grades, just a fantastic text. And then here in the middle, you see the true or false reptiles as an example of using something, a text that's used to kind of get kids excited about nonfiction and science, to twist that concept and use it as an analysis strategy, a strategy for developing deeper thinking, a strategy for writing, a strategy for viewing and engagement. We'll jump forward, and this next slide is a reminder that most of our teaching can be complemented and or inspired through children's literature. So if you're familiar with any of these texts that really focus on your roles in a community, what your neighborhood looks like, just taking some time to look around and honor and celebrate what's around you, the goodness, the beauty, the care, others, how your role plays out in terms of you interacting with others, and then looking at something or someone in our community that's often irksome and or challenging to embrace for community soup. Like, how can we see the goodness in that, and how can we look at that person or that situation differently to really honor and bolster community. We move forward yet again. We want this to take this opportunity as you would naturally do, hopefully all the time, both with and for your students and for yourselves, to reflect on learning experiences. And just by answering a few questions that we've posed here, like how might these strategies support your teaching? This would be a great time to pause and to just say, oh my gosh, I have this great idea for using the fourfold. I have 5 or 6 students that are badgering each other and all constantly at odds. I might use the fourfold to help them unpack friendship and what that means, what it means to be a friend. What texts might you use to teach community? And how can questioning and formulating questions become an integral part of your teaching and your students' learning? Then next, we showcase some extensions. These extensions are, technically part of a reflective process as well, just to help you see, what other possibilities there are. One thing that we want to remind you here is that, giving our students the opportunity to take the reins, so to speak, and take ownership of their learning is an integral part of their success in the community, which is our role and our job, right? So have them do the work, have them find the sources, have them find the texts, have them create the questions, have them challenge their peers with see, think, wonder in a primary source that's really cool or interesting, right? So to what degree can you have them do the teaching and the learning? And then we would be remiss if we didn't move forward to remote learning extensions. And, in the nature of teaching and learning right now, we realize how challenging it is and can be, but also how beautiful. Like, what opportunities like this can you create for your students? What tech tools are there available to you? And you don't have to become a tech wizard. Just grab a few and, hold white knuckled to those as you learn about their possibilities and come up with ideas for expanding their usage. We list a few here: Pear Deck, Flipgrid, Jamboard. What tools are there available for you to really create space for your learners, engage your learners, and keep up with what they're learning, which is our job, to monitor how much they've grown and to be able to say, oh my gosh, look at that. You should be so proud. And what can we do next to help you grow even further? We want to thank you for joining us today. This was a delight for us to really zoom in on something like community, because we feel like this is an essential part of every teaching and learning space. Certainly, we're trying to build the opportunity for our students to become integral members of community, positive members of community, thoughtful and courteous and respectful members of community. And these are just a few of the ways that we thought you might be able to support your learners in becoming those people.
And just as a reminder, so the session name and number is there, and we wanted just to remind you to do the survey that CCR is doing for these, just to give some feedback. Also, all of our contact information is there. Like I said, if you're interested in learning more about this, or possibly even doing a grant project, please feel free to reach out and contact us. I just want to mention that we have a number of other resources in the presentation that we're not going to have time to go through today. I'll just kind of scroll through them really quick here. But a lot of great other resources that can extend out and provide additional resources for your teaching relating to these subjects and teaching with primary sources, as well as some website resources here. I'll quickly scroll back up to the contact information so you can have that. But other than that, thank you. Unless there's anything else from my peers. All right, thanks everyone.